Step away from the radio, old man. Cadet Tyler Grant said it loud enough for the entire training floor to hear. A few nervous laughs followed. Then the main tactical display went black. Every voice in the Fort Redstone Command Training Center stopped at once. For half a second, the only sound was the low electric hiss coming from the battered field radio on the steel table. Walter Brennan stood beside it, 84 years old, narrow beneath a faded brown jacket. His right hand rested near the tuning dial, but he had not touched it. Not yet. Across the room, digital maps returned in broken pieces. Red warning boxes opened over the simulated mountain corridor. The drone feed remained gray. A white icon representing Raven Team blinked twice, then disappeared from the map again. Captain Harlan Price looked up at the mission clock. 17 minutes without confirmed contact. The exercise was simulated. The 4 soldiers in the corridor were not. They were moving through real terrain 8 miles north of the training center, carrying tracking equipment and blank fire weapons as part of a communications readiness evaluation. A storm front had shifted over the ridge faster than forecast. The temperature was dropping, and the route ahead of them crossed a narrow shelf already marked for possible rock movement. The training objective had been simple. Lose the primary satellite channel. Establish a secondary relay. Guide Raven Team back to the extraction road. Nothing about the room felt simple now. Restore the drone uplink, Captain Price ordered. Cadets bent over their consoles. Keys rattled. Headsets cracked with overlapping voices. Tyler returned to his station, jaw tight. Raven Team, this is Redstone Control. Respond on primary. Static. Raven Team, respond on alternate 1. More static. Walter tilted his head toward the overhead speaker. The signal rose, flattened, and vanished. Tyler tried again. Raven Team, authenticate and report position. Walter spoke without raising his voice. They cannot hear you there. Tyler turned. The attention of the room followed him. Walter's eyes remained on the old radio. Tyler had noticed the old man when the maintenance crew brought in the historical equipment that morning. He assumed Walter was a volunteer from the base museum, another retired veteran invited to make the display feel authentic. The jacket had no ribbons, no unit patch, no visible rank. To Tyler, that meant no authority. This is a restricted command exercise, he said. Visitors stay behind the yellow line. Walter looked down. The toes of his worn shoes were 6 inches inside the painted boundary. He stepped back without argument. The movement should have satisfied Tyler. It did not. What did you mean? They cannot hear us there. Captain Price asked. Walter listened to the static again. The relay is late. Tyler folded his arms. The relay is digitally synchronized. Then it is digitally late. A few cadets looked down to hide smiles. Tyler did not. We are using encrypted adaptive routing, terrain prediction, and satellite-assisted timing, he said. That radio was built before most of those words existed. Walter finally looked at him. Signals existed before the words. The room went still for a beat. Then another warning appeared on Emily Carter's screen. Secondary relay authentication failed. Emily leaned closer. She was 23, quiet in a room that rewarded quick answers. Unlike Tyler, she did not speak until she had something worth defending. The failure had occurred 9/10 of a second after the command transmission. The same delay appeared in the previous 3 attempts. She opened a private timing window. Tyler continued. Captain, the terrain model is producing a reflection error. I recommend shifting Raven Team to Relay Corridor West and forcing a fresh handshake. Walter's eyes moved to the map. No, Tyler gave a short laugh. No, the West Corridor is where the echo is coming from. Tyler turned toward the others as if inviting them to appreciate the absurdity. The echo. Walter pointed toward the mountain profile on the main screen. The signal is bouncing off that rock face. You are calling toward the reflection. Every time you increase power, you make the false return stronger. Captain Price studied the display. You can determine that from static? Walter looked back at the radio. Not from the static. From what then? The space inside it. Tyler shook his head. Captain, we are losing time. Walter answered before Price could. Yes, you are. That ended the laughter. The mission clock turned red. 15 minutes. Captain Price moved to Tyler's console. Show me the relay timing. Tyler pulled up the window. The graph looked clean. Nearly perfect. Emily looked at her own private log. It was not perfect. There was a shallow hesitation before every failed handshake. Less than a second. Too small for the primary dashboard to flag, but consistent enough to matter. Captain, she said. Price turned. Emily hesitated. Tyler was the cadet mission lead. Challenging him during a graded exercise would be noticed. She enlarged the log. There is a repeating delay. 0.9 seconds after every transmission. Tyler glanced at it. Normal terrain correction. It repeats exactly. Because the terrain does not move, Carter. Walter's voice came from behind them. The air does. Tyler closed his eyes for a moment. Sir, with respect, every interruption is costing us time. Walter did not react to the tone. He looked at Captain Price. May I hear the raw channel? Tyler answered first. No. Price raised one hand. Cadet Grant. Tyler stopped. Price looked at Walter's visitor badge. Walter J. Brennan. Historical Communications volunteer. You served in communications? Price asked. For a while. What period? Walter's gaze drifted to the old radio. A long one. Tyler pushed back from his console. Captain, we do not have time for riddles. He faced Walter. Everyone who served had a unit, a rank, a job. What did they call you when you were saving the world one radio at a time? The sarcasm reached every corner of the room. Walter's face did not change, but his right hand moved slowly toward the inside of his jacket. Emily saw his fingers touch something through the fabric. A folded piece of paper, perhaps, or an old photograph. Walter looked at Tyler for a long moment. They called when they needed a road home. Tyler opened his mouth. Captain Price cut him off. That is enough. The words were not loud, but the authority in them was real. Price turned to Walter. You may listen to the raw channel. You may not transmit or alter equipment without my authorization. Walter nodded once. That is fair. Tyler's face tightened. Price saw it. Cadet Grant, route the raw feed to the auxiliary speaker. Tyler obeyed. The clean digital filter dropped away. Static flooded the room. It was ugly, broad, and uneven. It sounded like rain striking sheet metal. Beneath it came faint pulses, scattered tones, and the low warble of atmospheric interference. Several cadets winced. Walter closed his eyes, not in concentration, in recognition. The fluorescent room softened around him. For one breath, the polished floor became mud. The white light became a gray sky pressed low over a mountain ridge half a world away. Walter was 27 again. Rain ran from the edge of his helmet and down the back of his neck. His radio pack was warm against his spine, the battery nearly gone. 16 men waited in a shallow ravine while voices moved somewhere beyond the fog. The map said the extraction road was south. The mountain said the map was wrong. A young lieutenant named Daniel Cole crouched beside Walter, one hand pressed over a bandage at his shoulder. How long? Cole whispered. Walter listened to the handset. The command signal was weak. Not gone. Bent. Long enough. That is not an answer. It is the one I have. Cole looked toward the men behind them. Some were injured. All were exhausted. If the line dies? Walter adjusted the dial by the width of a thumbnail. It does not. Cole stared at him. You cannot promise that. Walter held the signal inside the static. No, he said. But I can promise I will still be listening. A tone surfaced through the rain. 3 short pulses. One long. Then a breath of silence. Walter used the ridge itself as a relay, bouncing a weak transmission off stone until the signal returned from a direction the enemy was not monitoring. The first group moved. Then the second. Hour by hour, voice by voice, Walter built a road out of sound. Near dawn, Lieutenant Cole looked back at the last men reaching the extraction track. What do we call that? He asked. A sergeant behind him answered before Walter could. Ghost wire. The name moved quietly through the group. Not as a joke. As gratitude. The memory released him. Walter opened his eyes. Fort Redstone returned. The same pattern was buried beneath the training room static. 3 short pulses. One long. A pause. Walter stepped toward the field radio. His hand hovered above the casing. The radio was an old /PRC field set mounted for demonstration. Its green paint had darkened with age. The antenna socket was scratched. One corner of the metal housing carried a crescent-shaped burn beneath 2 layers of repair paint. Walter touched the burn with one finger. His hand began to tremble. Emily noticed. So did Captain Price. Tyler mistook it for weakness. Captain, he should not be touching museum property. Walter ran his thumb over the old scar in the casing. This was mine. Nobody answered. Tyler gave a small, disbelieving breath. Of course it was. Walter ignored him. He released the battery catch and opened the lower cover. Captain Price moved forward. "Mr. Brennan, I did not authorize." Walter stopped immediately and lifted both hands. Inside the open cover, barely visible beneath dust and flaking paint, someone had scratched 4 characters into the metal. GW6. Emily leaned closer. Tyler stared at it. "What is that supposed to prove?" Walter closed the cover carefully. "Nothing to you." The answer carried no anger. That made it land harder. Captain Price looked toward the mission clock. 12 minutes. "Can the radio help us contact Raven Team?" Walter studied the analog set, then the digital relay diagram. "It can help you stop calling the mountain you wish was there." Price made his decision. "Cadet Carter, connect the radio receiver to the analysis port. Receive only." Tyler stepped forward. "Captain, connecting unverified analog equipment could contaminate the feed. The port is isolated. It could distort our bearing model." Price looked directly at him. "Our bearing model has lost 4 soldiers." The words ended the debate. Emily took a shielded cable from the equipment tray. Her hands moved quickly, but not carelessly. She connected the radio's audio output to an isolated capture unit. The waveform appeared on her monitor. It was rough and broken. The automated filter immediately labeled most of it environmental noise. Walter watched the system begin cleaning the signal. "Turn that off." Emily looked at Price. Price nodded. She disabled the filter. The waveform became worse. Tyler shook his head. "You removed the only tool separating signal from garbage." Walter sat down in front of the radio. "No, I removed the tool deciding what garbage looks like." He placed the headset over his ears. The ear cups were too small, and the padding had cracked with age. Walter adjusted them as gently as a man handling something that had once belonged to a friend. His thumb touched the tuning dial. The trembling stopped. He moved it 1 fraction. Static rolled through the auxiliary speaker. Another fraction. A faint carrier appeared, then vanished. Emily marked the frequency. Walter moved again. "There," he said. Nobody else heard it. Tyler looked at the flat waveform. "There is nothing there." Walter held up 1 finger. The room became quiet. Under the static came a pulse. Weak. Broken. Then another. Emily enlarged the waveform. "I have something." Tyler stepped closer. "Source. Unknown. Strength. Below validation threshold." Walter lowered one side of the headset. "Your threshold is why you lost it." Tyler's face reddened. Captain Price intervened. "What are we hearing?" Walter looked at the terrain display. "Raven Team's emergency beacon." "That beacon is west of their last position," Tyler said. "The reflection is west." Walter pointed toward the steep northern face of the corridor. "The source is north-northeast, behind this saddle." Emily pulled up the elevation model. The standard tactical overlay flattened the ridge into a clean gradient. The high-resolution terrain layer showed something different. A hard stone face above a narrow cut, angled perfectly to throw the signal west. She ran a manual bearing comparison. 2 lines crossed north-northeast of the last confirmed position. Her breath caught. "Captain, the analog bearing supports him." Tyler moved to her screen. "It supports a possible secondary return." Walter put the headset back over both ears. "The team is moving." "How can you know that?" Tyler asked. "The pulse is changing against the reflection." "That is not enough data." "It is enough movement." A new message appeared on the range safety channel. "Rock shelf risk increasing. Raven Team, route unconfirmed." Captain Price read it twice. "Estimated distance from unsafe sector?" A controller answered through his headset. "If their last planned heading is unchanged, less than 800 yards." The room tightened. Tyler looked at the map. "We can send an emergency burst through Western Relay." Walter shook his head. "That will pull them toward the rock face." Tyler turned sharply. "You do not know their heading." "No." "Then stop speaking as though you do." Walter removed the headset. For the first time, something harder appeared in his eyes. "I know what men do when the map goes quiet. They keep following the last order they understood." The sentence changed Captain Price's face. He had done exactly that on his first deployment. Every person in the room who had served outside a classroom understood the danger. Walter continued. "If their last instruction sent them west, then west is where they are going." Price looked at the clock. 9 minutes. "Can you raise them?" "Maybe." "What do you need?" Walter pointed at the digital relay control. "Open a manual transmission window. Reduce power by half." Aim the relay at the northern ridge, not the team. Tyler stared at him. You want to transmit away from them. I want the mountain to carry it. Price looked at Emily. Can we do it without compromising the exercise network? Yes, Captain. Manual relay can be isolated. Tyler stepped between them. Captain, this is based on an unverified signal from a civilian operating obsolete equipment. Walter looked down at the GW-6 mark beneath the battery cover. Emily followed his eyes. She opened the base archive portal on a secondary terminal. The system asked for a search term. She entered GW-6, no result. She tried. Ghost wire, a restricted historical reference appeared. Field designation, ghost wire. Signal support detachment. Status, partially declassified. Emily's pulse accelerated. She clicked. Most of the page was blacked out, but one line remained visible. Brennan, Walter J., primary relay operator. Another line appeared beneath it. Instrument recovery tag, GW-6. Emily turned toward Captain Price. Sir. Price saw her expression. What? She rotated the screen. Tyler read the name first. Color drained slowly from his face. Captain Price looked from the archive entry to Walter and then to the old radio. Where did this equipment come from? A museum technician near the rear wall answered. Fort Redstone storage, sir. It was transferred from the Signal Corps collection last month. The original identification plate was missing. Emily read farther. A final declassified note appeared. Manual mountain relay procedure later incorporated into field signal training. Price looked at Walter. You wrote the relay procedure. Walter returned the headset to his ears. Men who needed it wrote it. Emily's secure terminal chimed. The archive search had triggered a command notification. A message window opened from the office of Major General Adrian Cole, Fort Redstone's commanding general. Confirm identity of Walter J. Brennan. Emily typed back. Identity confirmed by visitor record in GW-6 equipment marking. Present in training center. The response came immediately. Do not remove him. General Cole, en route. Emily looked toward Walter. He had already returned to the signal. He did not know a general was coming. He only knew 4 soldiers were still in the mountain corridor. Captain Price moved beside him. You have authorization. Walter nodded. Cadet Carter, open the manual window. Emily's fingers moved. Window open. Drop transmitter power to 40%. Tyler looked at the calculation. At 40%, the signal will not reach the team directly. Walter adjusted the tuning dial. That is the point. Tyler's jaw tightened again. The proof had shaken him, but habit still held on. If this fails, we lose another minute. Walter looked at him. If you keep calling the echo, you lose the team. Silence. Captain Price turned to Tyler. Cadet Grant, calculate the ridge angle. Tyler did not move at first. Then training overcame pride. He pulled up the terrain grid. North face is 32 degrees from relay center. Estimated reflection spread 7 degrees. Walter nodded. Good. Give me 34. Tyler entered the correction. The relay icon shifted away from Raven Team and toward the mountain wall. Every modern instinct in the room said it was wrong. Walter pressed the hand microphone. Raven Team, this is Redstone Control. Do not authenticate. Key twice if readable. Static answered. 5 seconds. Nothing. Tyler looked at the clock. Walter did not move. He listened. A faint click came through the speaker. Then another. Emily covered her mouth with one hand. They read us. Walter transmitted again. Raven Team, halt movement. Repeat, halt movement. He wants to confirm. 1 click. On the main display, the last estimated track froze less than 500 yards from the unstable shelf. Walter continued. Turn east by compass. Move 300 yards along the lower tree line. Do not follow the digital route marker. Key twice. 2 clicks. Tyler stared at the screen. The team marker did not move. Their tracker still had no clean handshake. Walter had only sound. He guided them anyway. Maintain east. The ground will rise under your left foot. When it levels, stop. A pause. 2 clicks. Emily whispered. How does he know the ground? Walter heard her. I remember the kind of mountain. The doors at the rear of the training center opened. No announcement came first. Major General Adrian Cole entered with his aide and the base command sergeant major. Every cadet snapped to attention. Captain Price turned. General. Cole raised one hand, ordering silence. His eyes had already found Walter. The old man remained seated at the radio, one hand on the dial, the other holding the microphone. Static whispered around him. Cole walked across the room. Tyler stepped out of his path. The general stopped beside the steel table and looked down at the scratched letters inside the open battery cover. GW6. His expression changed. Not dramatically. The hard command presence gave way to something quieter and older. Ghostwire, he said. Walter looked up. The name seemed to reach him from farther away than the general's voice. Cole came to attention. Then the commanding general of Fort Redstone raised his right hand and saluted the old man beside the radio. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Walter stared at the salute. His eyes shone, but no tears fell. He set down the microphone and stood slowly. His knees resisted. His back took an extra second to straighten. Then he returned the salute. Not as a museum volunteer. Not as a forgotten old man. As Staff Sergeant Walter J. Brennan, United States Army Signal Corps, retired. Cole lowered his hand first. My father was Lieutenant Daniel Cole. Walter's face tightened with recognition. The shoulder wound. Cole nodded. He carried the scar for the rest of his life. He also carried your name. Walter looked down at the radio. He carried his men. Because you kept the road open. Tyler's eyes moved between them. Captain Price stood silent. Cole turned toward the room. My father told me that 16 men came off that ridge because one signal operator refused to accept that a weak transmission was a dead transmission. He said Walter Brennan could hear a road where everyone else heard noise. The general did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The procedure this center teaches as adaptive terrain relay began with this man, a failing battery, and a radio that headquarters had already declared unreliable. Walter shook his head slightly. The mountain helped. Cole looked at him. My father said you would say that. The speaker cracked. A voice came through, faint but unmistakable. Redstone Control, Raven Team. Reading broken but readable. The entire room turned. Walter reached for the microphone. Raven Team, report. For personnel accounted for. We are east of the shelf, below the tree line. We saw rock movement behind us. Request final bearing to Extraction Road. Walter closed his eyes for 1 second. The folded paper inside his jacket seemed lighter. He opened them. Continue east until you reach the service marker. Then turn south. Redstone will bring you home. Copy. Tell whoever found this channel we owe him. Walter looked toward the cadets. No, he said into the microphone. You owe the next team your attention. Captain Price took over the channel and coordinated recovery. The danger passed without cheering. That made the moment stronger. On the screen, Raven Team's tracker reappeared. Four green icons moved away from the unstable sector and toward the extraction road. Tyler stood at his console with both hands at his sides. His face no longer showed anger. Only the hollow recognition of a man who had just seen the difference between knowing a system and understanding responsibility. Major General Cole turned to him. You were mission-led? Yes, General. You dismissed Mr. Brennan? Yes, General. You mocked his service? Tyler swallowed. Yes, General. Cole waited. Tyler looked toward Walter. Staff Sergeant Brennan, I was disrespectful. I trusted what looked clean on the screen and treated your experience like interference. I was wrong. Walter studied him. Tyler's apology was public, but it did not sound performed. Walter moved one hand across the radio's scarred casing. Do better when nobody important is watching. Tyler's throat tightened. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Walter looked at the rank on Tyler's uniform. And stop trying to sound certain when your men need you to be honest. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Captain Price stepped forward. General, responsibility is mine. I allowed the disrespect to continue because I was focused on the exercise clock. Cole looked at him. And what did the clock teach you? Price glanced toward the 4 green markers. That completing the event is not the mission. Bringing people home is. Cole nodded once. Put that in the after-action report. Later that afternoon, Raven Team returned safely. Their boots left dark marks across the polished training floor as they entered to thank the control staff. The team leader, Sergeant Luis Ramirez, stopped in front of Walter. He did not give a speech. He simply held out his hand. Walter took it. Ramirez's grip was firm. Walter's was not, but it held. We heard you when we could not hear anybody else, Ramirez said. Walter looked at the young soldiers behind him. That means you kept listening. Ramirez nodded. Yes, sir. Before Walter left Fort Redstone, Major General Cole ordered the historical radio removed from the temporary display. not to hide it, to restore its name. 2 weeks later, it returned inside a glass case near the entrance to the command training center. The crescent burn remained visible. The scratches remained. The GW6 marking remained exactly where Walter had found it. A brass plate rested beneath the radio. Field Radio GW6. Operated by Staff Sergeant Walter J. Brennan. Ghost wire. He kept the road home open. Beside the case was a new training directive. Every communications cadet would complete one exercise with automated filtering disabled. Every class would learn how to rain distorted imperfect signals. Every instructor would teach that a weak transmission was not worthless simply because software could not validate it. Tyler Grant attended the first session. He sat in the front row. Walter stood beside the old radio wearing the same faded brown jacket. Major General Cole had offered him a formal instructor credential. Walter accepted only after Emily Carter promised that nobody would make him use a presentation slide. Emily operated the analysis console. Captain Price stood at the back. Walter turned on the raw channel. Static filled the room. Several cadets waited for him to explain what they were hearing. Walter did not. He let them sit with the noise. After a full minute, he asked one question. What is the signal trying to become? No one answered immediately. Tyler closed his eyes and listened. Under the static, a small pulse rose and fell. His hand went up. Walter looked at him. There is a pause after the third tone, Tyler said. The source is moving behind the reflection. Walter gave one small nod. Now you are listening. When the session ended, Walter walked toward the door. This time, every person in the room stood. There was no applause. No one needed it. Tyler came to attention. Emily did the same. Captain Price raised his hand in salute, followed by the cadets and the 4 members of Raven Team. Walter stopped beneath the fluorescent lights. For a moment, his hand trembled near his side. Then it rose. He returned the salute. The old radio sat behind glass, silent now, its name finally restored. Some signals fade. The duty to listen does not.